Bank screws old lady, lawyer screws bank, old lady gets millions back. Posted this on /sCredit a while back and somebody suggested I should cross-post here. Financial advisors employed by a pretty major bank stole all the money of a wealthy old lady who was dying of Alzheimer's, and she didn't know anything until her lights were cut off. My brother was a pretty small-time lawyer, and got the call to represent her. Every other big-time attorney in the area had either passed on the case, or tried and failed to get anywhere. When you're up against a legal team that makes a collective $10,000/hour, it's not easy. And since banks always have mandatory arbitration clauses worked into their contracts, she couldn't sue or even do discovery. It was obvious what had happened, and the only people with access to the account were clearly implicated. But hey, it was hard to prove without any access to bank records, and under arbitration, it wouldn't matter anyway. They could be criminally prosecuted, but the bank wouldn't have to pay back the money. Did I mention the bank had, at this point, frozen the lady's access to her own accounts, due to fraud? So she couldn't even get her own bank statements. Anyway, my bro became pretty obsessed with avenging this woman. By the time he got the case, she barely even knew what her own situation was most of the time. But her son just wanted to make the bank bend over, and my brother was all in. He managed to find an incredibly obscure technicality that nullified the arbitration clause, and was able to force a major bank into the discovery process. That alone was a huge enough deal that the decision was written up in many legal newspapers across the country. After fighting and delaying discovery until the very last minute, the bank dumped 200+ boxes of documents on my brother the Friday before the Monday discovery hearing. He had 72 hours to go through tens of thousands of pages of documents. He rented himself a hotel for the weekend so he'd have no disturbances, had a friend bring a dolly and hand truck the boxes to the hotel room, and got to work. In one of the boxes was an email between a bank VP and the bank's chief lawyer. I incorrectly described this as two VPs in my previous post, discussing how there would never be a discovery process, so there was no need to destroy documents, future evidence, and also saying that they weren't worried about the little old lady's lawsuit since the bank had frozen her accounts, so she wouldn't be able to pay her lawyer, and he was just a small-time country lawyer, their words, who would surely quit once he wasn't being paid. It wasn't like he worked for some huge firm that could just pay his bills while he worked. They also discussed how the lady would likely die of Alzheimer's before her accounts would be unfrozen once the fraud was proven to be false. They had my bro all wrong, of course. He was working all day on paying cases and then staying up half the night working on this one, sometimes without getting paid anything for months. We did the math later. He made about $2.75/hour for his work over a span of 7+ years. Anyway, these chuckleheads openly discussed several illegal acts in emails to each other, and then failed to destroy the paperwork proving they had actually undertaken those acts, which, legally, they could have destroyed at the time, but they were so arrogant they thought they didn't have to. When my brother entered that into evidence Monday morning, they immediately motioned for a recess and offered to settle for, an undisclosed sum. He also won his client $10 million in a separate part of the lawsuit. One agent recently finished serving a long sentence in the same federal prison as Bernie Madoff. He also lost his home, the beach home he bought with the old lady's money, had his financial broker license revoked, and his wife left him. However, his kid did get a private college education paid for in cash with the lady's money, and he bought $200,000 worth of wine that was never recovered. Sadly, the lady did in fact die before the case settled, so the money went to her son and to a large charitable trust that then elected my brother as the main trustee. So he gets to disperse the money he won in the settlement, and see a lot of people benefit from his work. The funniest part of this revenge was that the apparent motive for the theft was not just that the agent wanted to be rich. He had accomplices, but he was the main mastermind. He specifically wanted to use the money to enhance his standing in the community. So actually, he donated a lot of the stolen money to charities, so that he could be invited to huge galas, get philanthropic awards, etc. Now he is broke, unemployed, divorced, and disgraced, while my brother is going to galas and getting philanthropic awards with the money this guy helped pay for with the sale of his houses, cars, etc. Pretty sweet. ETA, I feel obliged to spread the anti-arbitration gospel of my brother. If it weren't for a fluke technicality that led to the boilerplate arbitration clause being thrown out, there would have been no discovery and no justice for this lady. Under arbitration clauses, you're not allowed to sue a bank, brokerage, financial advisor, etc., and without a lawsuit you can't do discovery. And financial agents cannot be forced to pay you back for money they steal, even if you can prove they stole it. In this case, discovery led to evidence of tax fraud on the part of one of the agents who stole the money and didn't report the income, and the feds then gained a lot more access to the records. In conclusion, arbitration benefits the corporation 98% of the time, at the consumer's expense. Opt out whenever possible. Smiles. Try to make my life hard, I'll destroy you. Context: I am currently in high school, but this story starts in the 2nd grade. Anxiety, PTSD, you know the drill. The first day of 2nd grade we all go to school, settle in, then our school floods big time. The whole town is in deep water for 2 weeks. My house was fine as we live on a hill, but we had no power for 4 weeks. When we get back to school, every kid is at least a little traumatized, all but one kid. He laughed at kids who shared the stories, made jokes about pets who died. This was my first experience with him. Let's call him Adolf. Through 2nd grade he was a pretty standard bully, mean to me and my friends. But when 3rd grade came, something changed. Suddenly he was nice and friendly to everyone, except me. So when I told people how cruel he was, they wouldn't believe me because he was this little angel to them. Mid-4th grade came and Adolf was still getting worse, openly berating me in school. Then my house burnt down. He became worse, making fun of me for everything that came with that. 5th grade he becomes violent. Punching, kicking and hitting. One day I was sitting near the basketball court with some of my friends. Adolf walked up, kicked my in the left eye hard, leaving me with permanent damage and no depth perception. Doctors told me I could have lost my eye that day. 6th grade is when he took it too far. He sat at my table during lunch because all of my friends liked him. I got the flu and he used the week I was gone to convince them all that I bullied him. He also went and forced ears to the principal, who didn't like me anyway, and made up some story about me. When I came back, no one in the grade would talk to me, and the principal told me if he saw me near Adolf I would get suspended. After a week or so I realized no one had told these two nerds not to talk to me, so I befriended them. They are still my friends today. After about a month most of my friends had come crawling back apologetic. Now we're in high school and I decided it's finally time for revenge. I started simply about a year ago. I befriended all his friends without him noticing, then I befriended his sister and his mom. Once I was trusted by everyone he ever liked. I made a list, a graphic list, with dates, 6 pages long. It spanned every abuse he had committed for as long as I could remember. First I printed it and put it in his mail. He came to school with a black eye. Then I started airdropping it to everyone I could think of. No one knew it was me, except him. He remembered the things he did to me. But if he told anyone he would have to admit it was all true. Most his friends abandoned him, his grades dropped significantly. His girlfriend dumped him, and he got kicked off the baseball team because all the boys hated him. His life is in shambles, but he hasn't said a word to me or administration. I have no regrets. Before you comment, schools do not care about bullying. They will not stop it and you are likely to get in trouble for reporting bullying. Edit, I understand that in the grand scheme of things ruining my eye is worse than losing friends, but it was the last straw that made me want revenge. Edit, we could not do anything legal because there was no evidence. My eye was damaged but there was no way to prove that his was intentional, but Level 3 crooks get obliterated by Level 99 boss. Don't commit crimes you are too stupid for. Well, firstly, this is my second post. I have no idea how to format. English is not my first language and I don't know if this really fits here, but the revenge was delivered by a professional. What you need to know in advance. This didn't happen to me, but to my boss. He is a district attorney in a larger city in Germany, he drives an expensive car and he has a device that signals the police where he is and that he is in danger. The participants are, boss, 5 youngsters, B1 B5, B5 was the mastermind, and the police. Now to the story. One day he drove home from work and suddenly 2 boys, 17 and 16, B1 and B2, jumped in front of his car forcing him to stop. My boss was really scared, thinking that they are to take revenge on him, because he put many people in jail, and immediately pressed the button on this device to inform the police. The police immediately rushed with all available UNI. But they immediately shouted at him, accusing him of trying to kill them. The 3 other boys ran to the scene also shouting at my boss, that they are going to call the police and that he is going to lose his license. Then one of the 2 of them offers that he could give them all the money he got with him and they would leave him alone. At that point my boss decided to serve some spicy revenge on these assholes. Knowing that every police officer available is rushing to the scene and he only needs to play for time, so he immediately agreed, but under one condition. They all need to sign a written agreement containing that he paid the money and they are not going to press charges, inform the police. Those dumbasses agreed. So he wrote the contract and everyone signed it. After they handed the paper back they demanded the money, but my boss just laughed at them, stating that no one is going to believe them since he had a written proof, that what they have done was highly illegal and that they are going to jail. Not mentioning that the police was coming. The police came from fucking everywhere. Damn, he cannot resist a big wide smile when he is describing their faces, and I can totally understand that. They were looking like scared ghosts on the verge of existence. One of the smart boys, B3, thought that this paper needs to vanish, so this dummy decides to rip it out of my boss's hands in front of the police. As they should later realize this was their biggest mistake. Then they tried to escape from the police, but B1, B3 and B5 were caught. The police thought that they wouldn't get to know who B2 and B4 were unless one of the other snitches. Well, they didn't need a snitch because they all signed the paper with their real fucking names. So police got the other 2 as well. Fast forward to court, there were several trial dates, but I'll shorten it. Do you remember that I told you that B3 made a big mistake? Well, here in Germany there is a law from the Nazi era still in place that gets you a minimum sentence of 5 years when you rob a motorist. B3 and B5, both above 18, got 6 years in adult prison. Also BC of their criminal history, B1 and B2 got 3 years in juvenile detention and B4 was lucky with only community service. All in all, my boss actually didn't need to do much. They destroyed their lives mostly on their own. Sorry for my English, it's trash. Hope you could nevertheless enjoy this story.